Hey, what is up? Welcome to another edition of the Draft Show. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Sean Baligian. Lots to talk to, so forget the pleasantries. I hope everybody's well. Your take on the Lions-Rams deal?
It's a great deal. It's so the flexibility it affords them while having a reliable, adequate starter with Goff to hit the quarterback market. And this is I think the most important part of this is that you have a quarterback now that's an adequate starter for you. So you hit the market, right, and you're taking a shot. But with their capital that they recoup from Stafford, if for some reason they decide we love Zach Wilson and we need to get up to 2 this year with the Jets to go get Zach Wilson, they have the ammo to do that. If they decide they don't want to do that for any of these top 4 quarterbacks in this draft, then they can kick the can down the road and have an opportunity to do the same thing next year for potentially Sam Howell, the quarterback from North Carolina. Next year's not a great draft. Right now it doesn't look like a great class for quarterbacks, but there's an opportunity in that class to go reach and get after the quarterback. But you can also do it the year later in 2023. And generally speaking, teams have one opportunity in one window to go find quarterback, and they're going to settle on one of the quarterbacks in a specific class. And the Lions now with Goff have an opportunity to see what he is, and whether or not that's something, who knows? You know, it's a discussion that could go for hours. We don't know. But they do have the opportunity to find rookie quarterback in a multiple-year window, which is a difficult thing for quarterbacks to come up with the capital to be able to do that, or for teams to come up with the capital to do that.
I agree. The haul was great. Let's talk for a second on Jared Goff, because like, all jokes aside, I've let my feelings about Jared Goff be known. Jared Goff is an adequate quarterback in this league at this point in time. He is, okay? He's not the guy. And sadly, we've heard from a lot of people that think, well, let's see what he's got. Maybe he's the guy. I don't believe he's the guy. What are the Lions getting in Jared Goff?
So Goff is a player, he's a system quarterback who was in a system that made him look really good at times, but also, remember the whole McVay was able to talk to him for the first 15 seconds of the play clock? Mm-hmm. That was really a way of in which McVay was controlling where he wanted Goff to go with the ball. So in some regard, I'm not sure how much Goff has developed playing for McVay. I don't know that McVay really allowed that to happen because of the scheme and the system that he runs. So to me, we got to consider McVay's scheme was exposed a little, and the reality is that, you know, we've seen with Stafford, you and I have been to camp, you see what it looks like when he throws the ball and the way it comes out. It's just, it's really hard to describe. The words just don't do it justice. Goff is not that guy. He does not have a huge arm. He has plenty of arm to make NFL throws. It's just not going to look like it did with Stafford. So now consider the difference between the way Stafford throws the ball and, say, Chase Daniel, if you remember back this year. There's just a difference. The ball comes out different, and it will with Goff too. Goff does things well. He throws in-breaking routes really well. He can layer the ball over a linebacker in front of a safety really well, but you know, there's some limitations as to what he is as a quarterback, just like there are with any quarterback. But some quarterbacks have arm strength that allows them, the ability to put the ball into windows that others can't. The one thing I do worry about with Goff, and there are some positive intangibles, there are some things that he does well, but he looks to me, and this is why I went with the scheme and sort of stunting his growth. He looks to me like I've got to see it open before I want to throw it type of quarterback. And in the NFL, if you're doing that, you must have superior arm strength because windows close very quick. And to me, if I need to see it open before I throw it and I don't have great arm strength, that's danger.
Sure.
And there's a little bit of that with him, but some of it. Who are his weapons going to be here? What is the offensive system going to be? Are we going to run a lot of play action? They're going to be a run-heavy offense. So you've got an adequate starting quarterback, a guy who's going to bring stability to your offense. You also have a third-rounder this year and 2 first-round picks, which gives you the opportunity to fix that position going forward. And I think the smartest way to look at it is if the Lions like a quarterback in this class and they hit the quarterback in this class, Goff could be a 1-year player here. yeah, he would bring dead cap next year, but he also might be a player who's intriguing on the market a year from now.
You know, it's interesting. It's funny because that'll take us into what we wanted to talk about today. I saw in a conversation I was having with somebody on social media, and I don't recommend them, but somebody said to me, well, you have to remember he's got a better receiving core here in Detroit than he had in L.A. And I was like, do you know something that I don't know? Because I right now, as I sit here today, do you know what the Detroit Lions receiving core looks like? Quintez Cephas,
Victor
Bolden, maybe Mohamed Sanu.
I don't know about Sanu, but
Yeah.
Geronimo Allison opted out. He's signed.
Geronimo Allison.
Hawkinson as a receiver.
Hawkinson is a receiver.
That's it.
So, look, I know people don't like to hear it, Scott, especially around here when you look at some of the, unfortunate mistakes the Lions have made, and the fact that they've used so many first-round picks on running or wide receivers. It doesn't mean that you stop doing it, but Scott, wide receiver is definitely at play at number 7.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely, it is. And it needs to be. And is it too early? Is top 10 too early for receivers? Sometimes, yes, but it's one of the positions that does give you return quicker than other positions. I mean, if you're drafting a receiver 7th overall, he can play at a high level for you in year 1. If you're drafting a corner or a defensive end or pass rusher or whatever, sometimes there's a it takes time to develop those guys into where they're productive players, but receivers can come in and play at a high level right away. The Lions just happen to have a need for 1 and maybe even 2. They do. I mean, they need an elite player now. They need a wide receiver 1. We don't know what Galladay's future is here. I think they're going to tag him, but I don't know what it means after they tag him. The problem with the cap is that you might have to be moving pieces and manipulating things to get Galladay signed. And I'm not sure long term if it makes sense to sign him as a 27, 28-year-old if you know that you're not competing really for much in the next 3 seasons. Would he want to be here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
no,
it's
totally.
just like, divergent paths. But Galladay's a good receiver. He's a number 1 receiver. It's even if you're bringing Galladay back, you still have a chasm at the position.
Big time.
You need help.
Big time.
So if you don't have Galladay, you really need to be, getting after that position. We'll see. There are options at 7 that I don't think it would be an issue at all. It's not a reach. There's not going to be reaches this year.
And there are a lot of intriguing options at 7 as well. And that doesn't mean that you can't address elsewhere and find a receiver later in the draft and all of that.
There's going to be great options in round 2.
As we've seen in the National Football League in recent years. I mean,
a trend.
Guys, remember where Kenny Galladay was selected. Kenny Galladay has not lived up to what, in essence, is a third-round pick. There's just no other way to say that.
No, but there are, like last year was Brandon Ayuk, a player who went late in round 1.
I remember that.
Debo Samuel, late in round 1. There are players who slip to that part of the draft who become valuable players, and guys can come in and contribute immediately. And there's a crew this year of the later round 1, early round 2 types, but there are. We're going to get into 4 today at pick 7. One of them's a tight end who we're going to evaluate as a receiver.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Are you really going there?
I went there.
Oh, my gosh.
It is a mistake.
He's got a great point. Just hear him out. That's all I'm going to say.
I think it's a mistake to evaluate Pitts as only a tight end.
I agree with you.
It is a huge mistake.
I agree with you, pal.
Nice. He is a mismatch, the likes of which there are maybe a few in this draft.
We're talking about Pitts from Florida, if you haven't figured it out
Kyle Pitts,
yet.
tight end, Florida. 6'6", 240. He plays tight end, but it's one of those things where you have to move him around and utilize him as a weapon because he's a passing game weapon before he's anything else. He runs routes like a receiver. He's as dominant as any player is in this draft with the ball in the air. If the ball's in the air, it's his. Red zone, he'd be a monster in the red zone. But we're also talking about a guy with, he runs routes really well. he's very physical through those routes. He's smart with his hands. He's good with his hands. So he kind of, you can see him swiping defenders' hands to get off of press coverage. He's violent with his route running, and he opens up easily. He separates smooth and fluid, and he's fast. I mean, yards after catch. You know, I mean, you can see it just if you watch him, you can see him taking short passes and really going a long ways with them. Physicality, tossing guys to the ground who are trying to tackle him. He's a big player getting out into space. The thing is that he's a tight end, and we have to get over the idea of you can't take a tight end in the top 10. Well, this guy is one of those transformative pieces that you should never play as a tight end. You just shouldn't. You should play him as a receiving option. I would ask anybody who's doubting what I'm saying to go watch him and look at what he looks like on the boundary against coverage, and his body control, and his hands, and his ability to go up and get the ball. Contested catch game, he's dominant there. He'd be a nightmare of a player in this offense. But there's a leap of faith required simply because he's a tight end in the college level. What are your thoughts on him?
No, I agree. I mean, I can't tell you, and you've been privy to a lot of these conversations. I think things have changed in the last few years, but there is a difference, and I've talked to Joik about this. There is a difference between what the traditional tight end Brendan Pettigrew brings
the inline type?
Yeah, what he brings to the table.
Yeah.
You don't pick a guy like that at 20 overall. I'm sorry. I said it then. I say it now. You don't pick a guy like that at 20 overall, okay? But then you go into the Gronks, and you go into Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates, and though Jimmy Graham is the guy that everybody uses, and he even tried to do his contract by saying, why are you using me as a tight end? I'm not a tight end. My skill set is different and everything. When Jimmy Graham was the crap before some things built up on him and everything. I get the logic behind it. Good luck selling it to this fan base. As well as I. Yeah, I mean, that's just the reality of it. Good luck selling it to
somebody's
going
to wind up taking him early, and they're going to, if they utilize him the right way. And you can watch him as he runs routes. He's as nuanced in his route running as he'll shorten his stride at times, which forces the defender to throttle down a touch. And because he's a long strider and he's explosive, he'll then accelerate away from that defender just because he manipulated the defender into shortening his stride a touch. And then the play's over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just think about it in terms of how, just instinctual that kind of stuff is. I'm going to just slow my feet a touch. So are you. But as soon as I see you do it, I'm gone. You can't make up the speed because I'm just as fast as you are. That kind of stuff. I just think he is one of the true mismatch weapons in this entire draft, and he's one of those can't miss types. Now, if you draft him and you play him as an inline tight end, and you ask him to do a lot of blocking, I think you're wasting his talent. I just, he is. To me, he's. When I see him, I see a little bit Julio Jones type of play, where, and I do. I mean, at his moments
it's insane when he's playing. About.
It really is.
At that 6'6", 240?
And that's
insane.
I don't know that he's got his. I'm not sure that he's got Julio's 40 time or his long speed, but he's got plenty of it. So it's not that you're missing out on any of that stuff. It's just, is he a mismatch working? So at the NFL level, where does he win? And I would tell you that he's going to line. He would have to move him all over the place, but wherever he's lined up, he's going to win. Because teams are going to have to deal with him. Like, line him up out of the slot.
Sure.
What are you going to do with him there?
Yeah.
You're going to play a little slot corner against him and leave him alone? Good luck. So safety is going to have to occupy him, right? If a linebacker is covered on him, no. And if he's on the boundary, the back shoulder game is, I don't know how you stop it, because he's so big and he catches everything, and his catch radius is huge. He's going to make inaccurate quarterbacks look pretty accurate.
Now, of course, that isn't the only wide receiving option near the top of the draft. Scott, I think it's safe to say there are three names that are generally and genuinely considered to be in that general vicinity of 7. All three guys could go 10. One could maybe slip out of the 10 or whatever, but I think it's safe to say 3. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, let's start with Jamar Chase. I think he's because he sat out this year, it's tough to know exactly where like in what order they're appearing right now. But before the season, if none of this stuff was going on, I think Chase would have been considered wide receiver 1. The other, and it's size wise, he has good size. He's 6 foot and 205 pounds. The other two, Devonta Smith is a total outlier at 170 pounds. I mean, he just is. But you cannot argue with what he is as a football player.
Can't do it.
You can't. And then Jalen Waddle is short and a little smaller, but there are things that he does in his game that make me think, we'll get into that. But I think Chase is wide receiver 1, but then you have to consider he didn't play this year.
Mm-hmm.
Chase was a player who
Mike Williams, shout out. How you doing, Mike?
Chase was a player who made Justin Jefferson go into the slot position for LSU 2 years ago, and Justin Jefferson was pretty awesome as a rookie.
No doubt.
Right? So, I mean, there's a little bit of maybe Chase is really that good. Now, I don't know that he's not a burner. He doesn't look to be a burner. He's more physical in his approach to the game. He's very physical running through contact at the line of scrimmage. So teams are going to have a hard time pressing him. He's pretty adept at dealing with press coverage. In fact, it almost looks like he enjoys contact. Right? Like you can see him especially when the ball is in his hands, he seeks it out.
Sure.
So there are no issues with dealing with contact. He wants to deliver punishment. He's a very physical player. He's got really strong hands. You can see him catch the ball, and there are times when I think the hand strength it's obvious watching him catch the ball. He's really good with the ball in the air. He's got great body control. He tracks the ball well. He positions himself to use a defender's leverage against him, which is kind of football IQ stuff, where you can see that he understands what a defender's trying to do, and he will exploit that. And I think that's the kind of stuff that gets me intrigued watching him is how he'll be running a route and he'll do some subtle movement which forces a defender to turn his hips a touch, and then he goes the other way. And now the defender's got to make up that bad movement, and Chase is open. So he looks like he's an alpha. You can see it on film. He's that guy. Again, he loves contact. He really wants to get after a defense with the ball in his hands. He's precise in his movements. There's nothing that's real wasted in what he does. He's proficient near the line of scrimmage, in the intermediate game, and in the vertical game. He does all those things really well. So the questions with him are speed, and I'd say I'm not sure that speed's so much of an issue because he's running away from SEC defenses. Right, but it just doesn't look like he's crazy fast. But for his game and the way he wins, I don't think he needs to be. So this is a player who's going to be more dominant via contested catch type scenarios because things are going to speed up at the NFL level. But he's also a good enough route runner that he can separate early in routes to where he's a reliable player going forward. He's a really polished player. Very, very polished player. It's just a year off.
I was going to say, how much of a factor is that, Scott? How much of a fear factor should they be, considering he hasn't played for a year? And yes, I'm not saying that it's going to turn into Mike Williams because there were other issues with Mike Williams, lazy, that came into play. How big of a factor will that be with teams?
I don't know. That's going to be a question we won't know for a while because we're not going to have a traditional combine where teams can look at him and say, oh, he's in shape and he looks good and he's running, all these routes that we're asking him to run. It's going to be a factor, but it's an unknown, just being totally honest. There's really no answer for that. For him, I don't know it's going to be as much of a factor as it is for other players because I think with that alpha mentality and the season he had, in 2019, I mean, just watching him, I'll tell you, when things broke down for Joe Burrow and that offensive line, and he escaped the pocket, Jamar Chase was a nightmare to deal with. He made huge plays happen because he was smart enough to find openings in the defense when Burrow was escaping the pocket. But I don't have a great answer for the question. It's going to take a leap of faith. Somebody's going to have to look at his 2019 film, and obviously they're going to love it. It's just the year off. What does it do? I don't know. I mean, I would say that it shouldn't do anything for this type of player.
Do you know what a player told me, and I'm not going to mention his name. I bet if you think really hard, you can you can figure out who it is. But I got to know a wide receiver who missed some time, and he told me point blank he couldn't figure out what happened to his speed when he was away from the game so long. He said, I always had speed, and then when I came back, all of a sudden my 4.45 was a 4.6, was a 4.65. That potentially could scare people off. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement, but he kind of buoys against that argument because of the way he wins, which is with the ball in the air.
Sure.
Body control, contested catch, hand strength, coming down with 50-50 passes that aren't 50-50 passes, they're 90-10 passes. That kind of stuff. So even if you were to say that, this is a player who has lost at a little bit of his top end speed, he's still going to be very productive
Sure.
at the NFL level because of the way he wins. Now, the next two guys that we're going to talk about, if they lose some speed, then we're going to have issues.
It's funny because this is the debate, and I've heard both sides of it, so I'm really intrigued. I purposely have not talked to Scott about this. More often than not, we kind of talk about what we're going to talk about on the show. That's why we're talking about wide receivers. But I have not talked to you about this. It is amazing. You could ask 10 people, Scott, and it seems like 5 people are saying one Alabama receiver, and the other 5 are saying the other Alabama receiver. It's fascinating. It's not 7-3, it's not 8-2. It just seems like it's 50-50 depending on which guy you're talking to.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out because they're both small. One of them happens to be outlier small, like slight, like Devonta Smith. Let's go to Smith at this point. 6 foot. In that range, 170 pounds. That's it, right? I mean, but there is nothing else that you could say negatively about his game.
Watch him. Watch him.
Yes.
Really, that's one of those things. Watch him.
Nothing else that you could say. Yeah, I don't like this.
Love the kid.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Yes, and off the field, like the speech. That he just the way he presents himself and the way he carries himself, it's very, very impressive. As a player, again, it's the slight nature of his build that I think will alarm some teams into thinking, maybe that's a mistake. Because when you watch him on film, he's got everything. He's got really good hands. He catches everything, anything near him, he catches. He's very flexible. He's comfortable in the middle of the field, even though we just said he's slight. He's a touch small. He doesn't show any fear going across the middle. He doesn't. There's none of that, right? There's none of that. I'm shying away from contact because I don't want to get hit by bigger players. He doesn't have to deal with any of that kind of stuff. But where he wins, and where he's so dominant is in his route running ability, which is, again, it's early in his route. He's fantastic. In the middle of his route, he's phenomenal. But it's at his stem where he's breaking from his route. He wins so much at that point of his route running. It's very difficult for defenders to stay with him. And he's a smart runner, a route runner. He understands, again, like we were saying with Chase, he understands leverage. But he's so proficient with his feet and being able to separate whether it's early, intermediate, or deep. There's a play against Mississippi State in 2020 when it's a touchdown. And it's just something as a simple slant, maybe from the 7-yard line. But you can see his understanding of a defender's leverage in that play. Just watch that play. And he takes a couple steps at him, takes a little jab step with his left foot, and forces the defender to just turn a little bit. And as soon as the defender turns, he cuts back inside and touchdown. And yeah, it's simple stuff, but his footwork forces the defender to turn a touch, which then opens the door back inside, and it's an easy touchdown. It's that kind of stuff where you can see that he's both aware enough mentally, but then the explosiveness in his movements that are going to give a defense a problem with him.
Can I ask you this? I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a second because I'm sure you've heard this argument before. Is the fact that he played for a semi-pro team with Alabama and they were able to protect their quarterback to the level that they were able to protect their quarterback, is that somehow a perceived slight against him into the National Football League because his quarterback won't have that time to throw? You know how people hold that against Mac Jones?
Yes. I mean,
is that something that somebody would look at one of the Alabama receivers and go, it's not going to be as easy for you in the National Football League?
I don't think it'll be as easy for Devonta Smith in the NFL.
Okay.
I think there are moments watching when, I wrote this and it just drove me nuts, is why do teams give him a free release at the line of scrimmage, let him run upfield, and then ask a safety to pick him up at some point 10 to 12 yards downfield? Why are you doing that? Because you're losing if you're doing that.
Oh, no question.
It happened over and over and over. And he's full speed at a point where a safety's got to take the perfect angle to cover him, and they're just not capable of doing it. So do I think NFL defenses are going to do that? No. Do I think that offensive coordinator is going to try to do some of those things with him? I think they'll try, but I'm not sure it's going to be as easy as it was with Alabama and everything else they had going on. Like, I mean, it's when you look at the Alabama offense, it's especially when Jalen Waddle was in there. Who do you want to stop? Who are we covering? I don't know. Everybody, right? So it's yes, there's some of that with the Alabama offense, and I do think with Smith it'll be a little harder for his game to translate as well as his 2020 season was into the NFL. Now, really, it's very difficult to find anything to knock on him. Again, it's just his frame and can he hold up?
You know as well as I do, they're looking for things to knock on you. That's why sometimes I have to play the role of devil's advocate and say dumb things. Because, I mean, that's the stuff that's out there. I mean, you know it.
Yeah, they're trying to drag him down. They're trying to find things where he's going to fail at the NFL level. I mean, he's difficult to bring down with the ball in his hands. He just is. He's hard to tackle. He's slippery. He's a difficult guy in space to get to the ground. He is, even at 170 pounds, right? So, you know, it's hard to even think negative thoughts about what he is as a player because he's so polished at everything he does. It's just how much of the offense kind of floated him, right, just because of how effective he is as a route runner,
sure,
and how proficient he is with his feet. And then what happens at the NFL level when everybody else is just a touch quicker? He'll be very productive. It's just I can see teams kind of wanting to think, okay, we just can't. I mean, there's still a little dinosaur mentality at the NFL, the NFL.
No doubt
we can't take a 170-pound receiver in the top 5. We just can't do it. But I mean, from a football standpoint and on the field stuff, he is as polished. He is smooth and fluid, and he's fast and he's explosive. He's not Jalen Waddle fast, but he's fast enough.
Nice segue.
Yeah, he's fast enough at the SEC level for it not to be an issue for him at all.
Waddle.
Everybody needs to sit down for this. Waddle. Okay, so Waddle is, we talked about Pitts being a mismatch. Waddle is one of the true guys in this draft where you could say, if I throw the ball to him 2 or 3 times a game, I still think there's a strong chance that he scores. And even if those are slants or drag routes or whatever it is, get the ball in space to him and let him run. And his speed is different than Devonta Smith or Jamar Chase. It's just different. The way he runs and outruns angles in the SEC where there's fast guys. So, you could see it on film with him where he'll just catch a short little pass and then he'll run to the sideline. And at that point, he's already outrun a linebacker whose job was to cover in the flat, and he's outrun a corner. But now the safety who's come up on him and thinks that he's got a great angle to take him down for like a 10-yard gain, the safety's now running after him because Waddle's outrun that angle. And not just outrun that angle, he's blown that angle away. And that happens over and over and over again, where in the SEC, this guy's so fast that defenders don't know how to judge his speed. And you can see repeatedly defenders just kind of grasping at him because he's just too fast for him. He's too fast. So he's one of those guys where I want the ball in his hands a lot, whether that's screens or drag routes or simple slants, that kind of thing. You're going to have to move him all over the place. He's 5'10", and he's 183 pounds, so he's shorter and a little bit smaller, but there's a physicality at which he plays with that gives me some I don't have a lot of worry about him being more on the small side because of the way he plays. He moves like a joystick. He has crazy start-stop movements. He's elusive. He's slippery. His acceleration is instant. He can be running full speed, and there's another gear behind his speed that most guys don't have. Most guys can run, and then they hit full speed, and that's where it is. He runs, gets to full speed, and when he needs to, there's another gear there where he can run away from you. And that's where I think, that's where the teams are going to have trouble with him.
Sure. With
that type of speed. And it's rare to see that. Like, you've got instant acceleration with him, and it's super twitchy. And then he's super fast. And then when he needs to kick it in a touch, he's gone. And it's not like you see that once or twice. You can see it on punt returns and kick returns. He did that a lot last year. He did it in the first 4 games before he broke his ankle this year. He chews up cushion that a defender wants to play off him, and he'll play off 7 or 8, 10 yards, whatever it is. And he chews it up so fast that a defender isn't really ready for it.
Sure.
And it's hard for them to turn their hips and run with him because he's so fast, and it happens so sudden, and he's just run by you, right? So now he's got a stutter go move that's like super fun to watch. Like, he's just kind of chew his feet a little bit and then boom, gone. And it's the same thing. He's forcing a defender to stop his feet, knowing that over the next 10 yards, I can beat you because I'm in control of the route and I'm stopping my feet, and so are you, but I'm too fast for you to recover. So it's those kind of movements. But here's the stuff that makes me think he could be a total rock star at the NFL level. And it's obviously the speed and in the way he utilizes his speed. But it's also when you see him having to win at the catch point. Talking about a small guy. But him going up, among multiple bodies and multiple defenders who are set to drill him, right? And coming down with the ball is super impressive for a smaller receiver. It's the kind of stuff that makes you go, wow. Okay, not only is he super fast where he's going to run away from you, but he's also willing to mix it up and go get. It's a little bit why Beckham was so valued in the LSU offense.
Yeah.
Is because not only could he beat you with speed and run away from you, but when the ball was in the air and if he had to get up there and be super physical to go get it, he would. So does Waddle. So that kind of stuff. But then there's also the vertical route running, which to me, this is super interesting to watch what he does, stacking a defender in a vertical route. And instead of running straight down the field, he'll run with a touch of an arc. And I think there's some desire to talk about his route running as being a little bit, I don't want to say the word raw, but some people think he needs more polish there. But when I watch that kind of stuff, he's doing this on purpose. Because what he's doing is he's running a little bit outside the numbers, and then he's coming back to the numbers and forcing a defender to have to deal with him. It's a little bit like the same thing we talked about with Chase and Smith. It's having a defender slow his feet.
Yeah.
The thing that he's doing is he doesn't have to slow himself to do this. I hope I'm describing this well. So he's running a little bit of an arc to think about like a 30 or 40 yard route. And then he's coming back to the numbers where the defender's running straight and forcing the defender just to slow down a touch. And then he's running away from him. And it's super polished with what Devonta Smith does this too.
The Mahomes deception, like Salah talked about. Mahomes is kind of looking like Fred Sanford. He kind of waddling, and the next thing you know, he blows by you.
Yeah. So a defender might be running down the numbers, and the defender's looking at Waddle, and he's got him covered because Waddle's now strayed between the numbers and the sidelines. And when Waddle comes back to the numbers, the defender thinks, okay, I've got him covered, but I got to slow down just a touch because I'm going to run into him, and it's going to be a penalty or whatever it is. But Waddle hasn't slowed down; the defender has.
Yeah.
So it's the ultimate way to stack a defender.
That's great.
And create deep vertical separation.
I love that.
Does. And that's the kind of stuff. So when you see that, when you see the contested catch stuff, and then the sheer speed, that's the kind of stuff where I go, okay, 7 overall, Jalen Waddle, sold.
It's a big statement. He doesn't make statements like that. That's why
yes,
no,
I do.
you do not. You play it safe. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But when you say something like that, when you're sold to, I don't remember you talking that way to me.
I'm sold on
telling you.
Jalen Waddle.
Okay.
I am.
There you go.
I am. He could be the guy this year. I might have to write a letter to him.
At the 7th overall pick, the Detroit Lions select. Now, Scott, and that's part of the reason why, I know we have just a couple minutes remaining, but that's part of the reason why, look, I hope you all up. There's a possibility that the Lions go wide receiver at number 7.
Yeah, so
there's a
I think we
possibility.
need to address the issue of durability with him. They have to overcome that. And the ankle
How big
injury,
of a concern is it?
That's something they're going to have to contend with. They have to resolve the idea that he has durability issues. Does he? We're going to find out. But I think to me, I don't see any issues with him durability wise or athletically he deals with contact fine. He's one of the guys.
It's not Kerryon Johnson?
No, he's one of those guys. I think that he's one of the few in this class that are game-changing types instantly with the ball in his hands. Now, in round 2, at the bottom of round 1 into round 2, we've seen this trend pop up where a really good team is going to end up with a very high-polished receiver just simply via the function of where they're drafting.
Sure.
So in this draft, there are a bunch of guys in that range. There are a bunch. Rondale Moore from Purdue, 5'9" and 180 pounds.
Familiar?
He's small.
Yes,
Reminds
familiar.
me a lot of Golden Tate. There's a lot of Golden Tate in his game. Contact balance is great. Really elusive within his movements. Start, stop. He's a little bit like he's got joystick movements too, where he's difficult to get to the ground, and he's super willing to deal with contact. I would tell him he needs to figure out his helmet because his helmet's always popping off, right? Like,
Yeah.
But he'll lower his shoulder and drop it,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
he's one of those guys that I think in round 2, very intriguing option. Rashad Bateman from Minnesota is a bigger, more polished receiver. If you're looking for a bigger receiver, he has a false step to every single route he runs. It's almost like a gather step. Now there are times when I know he's doing it because he's trying to run a route and he's trying to get a defender to do something. But there are also times when he doesn't need to do it, like when he's lined up out of the slot and there's no defender near him, he still does it anyway. So they got to clean that kind of stuff up. But this is a very polished player. He's really good ball skills. He's great at tracking the ball. He's big. He's I want to say 6'3" and 6'2" and 210. So he's a bigger player, more of an outside type of weapon, but a very interesting player. Kadarius Toney from Florida runs routes like it's freaky to watch. It's fun to watch. His footwork is insane, crazy. Again, smaller player, 5'10", 195. He's very nasty as a route runner. He's also nasty as a blocker. He's one of those guys where you shouldn't turn your head and take your eye off of him because he will drop his helmet and put it under your chin. Watch it. It's fun to watch. He's nasty as a blocker.
I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and a very feisty, productive player. I would consider him Debo light in that way. He's very difficult to get to the ground. He runs really aggressive. He runs violent. He's just not as thick as Debo was.
Yeah.
Elijah Moore from Ole Miss is another one, 5'9", 185. In this draft, there's a lot of smaller slot types in the mid part. So, end of round 1 to early round 2, there's a lot of guys who are similar size, similar playmaking abilities. Guys who can win vertical, but also out of the slot, you have to manufacture touches for them and get the ball into their hands so they can be effective. Elijah Moore from Ole Miss, 5'9", 185. He's your slot playmaking type. He's got some vertical skills too. He's very tough. He has good hands. He's one of those guys that if you told me we drafted him because we want our quarterback to get rid of the ball very quickly, okay, that's one of the guys. Like Rondale Moore is that guy. Kadarius Toney's that guy. Elijah Moore is that guy. So there's those guys in that range. Terrence Marshall from LSU is another big receiver. He's 6'3" and 200 plus pounds. He's kind of been kind of a forgotten guy in the LSU offense because he was pretty productive 2 years ago with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
It's amazing how that works out.
Yeah,
isn't it?
and I think he's got multi-position versatility. He's going to need to be moved around a lot, and that's okay because you could play him inside and out, and that's fine. He's very polished. I think he's a really good combination of speed and quickness for a taller player. he'd be an intriguing option for where the Lions are in round 2 as an outside guy with some ability to move things around. So, I mean, they're going to have options if they choose not to take a receiver in round 1. There will be reasonably exciting options in round 2 if they choose to attack it there. And then there's Tutu Atwell from Louisville, he is tiny, 5'9" and maybe 160 pounds, but it's like he's wearing a rocket on his back when he runs. Speed is just crazy. I mean, like off the charts crazy, but he's so small, So we'll see. If a team covets speed the way the NFL looks to be trending, he could go earlier than some people are thinking, just because he's so fast. So those are the.
This flies by fast. Speaking of fast,
yeah.
Dude, we just blew 40+ minutes. I'm sitting here going, how the hell did we do that? But thank you.
Anytime.
No, well, let's do it again next week.
Okay.
Since you said
I'm in.
anytime, can we do it again next week?
Sold.
Definitely. All right, that's going to do it. You figure out what you want to talk about next week.
Okay.
What do you want to hit on next week?
I don't know. I'll let you know.
We'll talk about it for sure. All right. By the way, Super Bowl prediction, you have one?
No.
Okay.
No. Should I have one? Do I need to have one?
You don't have to have one. 34-31 Chiefs.
Ooh.
That's what I'm saying. All right,
That'd
listen,
be a great game.
For Scott Bischoff, until next week, my name is Sean Baligian. Special shout out to our boy Fish. We appreciate you helping us out. Thank you, most importantly, for watching. We'll check you next week. Later.